I used to believe that every home had its own strange way of showing love. Some families hugged too much, some spoke too little, some argued like thunder, and others laughed like sunshine. But growing up in my foster home, I learned something different. Some households don't show love at all. Some households ration it, control it, and hand it out to only the chosen few. And I was never chosen. From the outside, our home looked warm, a spacious compound, bright walls, and the smell of cooking drifting from the kitchen. Outsiders always complimented us. "What a blessed family," they said. "Your parents are raising such good children." I always wondered which children they meant, because the treatment inside was never equal, and I was reminded daily that I was not one of them. Morning routines were the first reminder. My foster siblings woke up to gentle knocks on their doors and soft voices calling their names. Me, I woke to commands. Get the water ready. Go wash the plates. Clean the sitting room before anyone comes down. Before sunrise, I was already working. The others, still stretching sleep from their eyes, would stroll to the dining table. Their plates always waited, neatly arranged with warm food. Meanwhile, I hovered near the doorway, waiting for someone to notice I had no plate again. I never heard, "Come sit, your food is ready." What I heard was, "We didn't know you didn't eat. We thought you would make yours. There wasn't enough, manage something later." That later never came. Sometimes, when I finally gathered courage to ask for food, their faces tightened as if I was begging for gold. "Didn't you already eat yesterday night? You better not finish everything. Don't be greedy." Greedy, for food that everyone else received freely. The emotional distance wasn't loud. It wasn't shouting or insults. It was quieter, colder, cutting deeper than words. It was the way conversation shifted when I walked in. The way laughter stopped, as if my presence changed the temperature of the room. When I sat on the couch, people adjusted themselves, subtly inching away, leaving a sliver of space that felt like a canyon. I wasn't bullied. That might have been easier to fight. I was ignored. And that is a pain you can't fight, only feel. Chores were the second reminder. The rule was simple. If something went wrong, Sarah must have done it. A cup broke in the kitchen, "Sarah, come here." A shoe went missing, "Where did you keep it?" The TV remote wasn't found, "Why are you always scattering things?" Even when I was not there, even if I was outside fetching water or sweeping the backyard, the blame still circled back to me. I became the explanation for every inconvenience. What hurt most wasn't the work itself. It was the way the others watched me. They walked past me while I scrubbed the floor, stepping around me without acknowledging me. They switched on the TV and laughed at shows while I washed their plates beside them. No one said, "Thank you." No one asked if I was tired. No one treated me like part of the family. The sun was scorching, the kind of heat that presses into your skin. We had just returned from school, exhausted. My foster siblings rushed inside and opened the fridge, each taking a full glass of cold water. I waited until they were done and then walked to the refrigerator. The jug was almost empty, only a few drops clung to the bottom. I lifted the jug and looked at my foster father. "Can I refill it and take some?" He didn't even look at me. "Take what is there," he said. "Don't be greedy." But later never arrived. That night, I sat on my bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering why I was the only child who entered the family and lost every piece of myself there. There were smaller moments too, tiny stabs that added up over time. Like the day my foster mother cooked jollof rice. The aroma filled the house, and the others rushed to get their plates. When I came with mine, she frowned. "You, wait. Let the children eat first." The children. As if I wasn't one of them. By the time the pot reached the bottom, the grains left were burnt and stuck together. She scooped that and dropped it into my plate. "Eat that." at least you have something. Also, like the day new clothes were shared. Everyone got something new, shirts, blouses, shoes. Mine. A worn-out dress they claimed still had life in it. It's still good, they said. You're not going out much anyway. And the time my foster siblings went on a weekend outing. They came back with ice cream, snacks, and stories full of laughter. When I asked why I wasn't told, they replied, "You wouldn't enjoy it. There wasn't enough space. We forgot." Or the countless nights I overheard whispers in the living room. "She's too quiet. She should be grateful we took her. She's not like the others. Don't treat her like the children, she's different." That word, different, buried itself in me. It was the foundation of everything I felt. Different meant less. Different meant unwanted. Different meant invisible. Even affection had borders. My foster mother hugged the others, patted their backs, fixed their collars, played with their hair. With me, her hands were tools, correcting, directing, pushing, never comforting. One day she braided the girls' hair for school. They sat on stools laughing while she oiled and patted their hair gently. When it reached my turn, she sighed heavily. "You should learn to do your own hair," she murmured. "You're old enough." Her fingers were rough, quick, impatient. When she finished, she didn't step back to admire her work like she did for the others. She simply wiped her hands and walked away. I stared at myself in the mirror. The braids were uneven, but what hurt wasn't the hair. It was the message beneath the action. You are not worth the care. Nighttime was the loneliest. The others slept in comfortable rooms, sharing jokes until they dozed off. My room was small, tucked in a quiet corner, like a storage space that became a bedroom by accident. The mattress was thin, the fan squeaked every few minutes, and the walls carried the echoes of every painful day. There were nights I cried quietly into my pillow, terrified someone would hear me and call it drama. Other nights, I simply stared into the darkness, wondering what I had done to deserve being treated as less than the others. I didn't want luxury. I didn't want special treatment. I wanted to feel like a child in a family that claimed to have taken me in out of love. Just once, I wanted someone to show me that I mattered. Still, for years, I carried a small hope, a tiny flame, that maybe one day, something would shift. Someone would soften. Someone would call my name with kindness. Someone would look at me and say, "You are family." But that day never came. Some people say you get used to pain if you feel it long enough. But I don't believe that. You don't get used to it, you just learn how to carry it without making noise. By the time I was a teenager in that house, I had become an expert at silent caring. Every morning, I moved through the house like a shadow. The others walked with confidence, knowing the home belonged to them. Their footsteps were loud. Their voices even louder. Mine stayed quiet, careful, almost apologetic, like I was afraid to disturb the air that didn't belong to me. The difference between us showed in everything, even the smallest routines. There was the issue of breakfast, for example. My foster mother liked to cook tea and bread for the children before school. The table looked like something from a commercial, milk tins open, hot water steaming, small plates neatly arranged. But the rule was unspoken and understood. It's only if someone gives you permission. The children sat and ate. I hovered. Some days I stood in a corner until everyone finished, waiting to see if anything remained. When I tried to reach for a slice one morning because I was late and hungry, my foster mother looked at me with irritation. "Don't bring your hand there. Let them finish first. You behave as if you're starving." I froze. My hand was still hanging in the air. I pulled it back slowly, feeling the heat of embarrassment crawl up my neck. The children smirked. Someone whispered, "She's always acting hungry." Acting hungry. As if hunger was a performance. I went to school that day with an empty stomach, pretending the tightness in my throat was just the morning cold. Then there were the chores, the never-ending rotation of tasks that somehow belonged only to me. The other children cleaned their rooms, sometimes. But I cleaned the entire house. If the living room was dirty, I cleaned it. If the dining area was messy, I arranged it. If clothes needed washing, I washed them. If water wasn't fetched yet, that was my responsibility. Once, when rain was pouring heavily and I suggested we shared the chores so we could finish earlier, my foster brother raised his eyebrow like I had said something outrageous. "Are you not the one here for all these things?" he asked. The girls laughed. My foster mother just looked at me and sighed, shaking her head like I had disappointed her simply by speaking. So I stopped asking. It became easier to walk quietly than to hear the reminders of how different I was. But the real wounds were not in the chores. They were in the comparisons. Every mistake I made was magnified. Every mistake someone else made was excused. If one of my foster sisters spilled water, they said, "It happens." If I spilled water, even accidentally, it became a lecture. "You're always careless. You can't do anything right. You need to learn how to behave." Once, I dropped a spoon while washing. Just a single metal spoon. It slipped from my hand, hit the floor, and made that small, familiar clang. My foster father came out of his room with annoyance written all over his face. "What is wrong with you?" he snapped. I opened my mouth to explain it was just a spoon, but he cut me off. "Always making noise, always breaking something, always disturbing this house." I lowered my head. The spoon lay on the floor like evidence of a crime. One of my foster siblings whispered to another, "Even spoons are afraid of her." Everybody laughed, except me. That night, I cried quietly into my pillow again, tired of being the family's scapegoat. Holidays were the hardest. Not because the work increased, I was used to that, but because holidays showed clearly who belonged and who did not. On Christmas mornings, everyone received something. Clothes. Shoes. Small gifts. Sometimes even money. They squealed, hugged each other, and thanked our foster parents. When it came to me, the reactions were always awkward. "Take this one," they said, handing me an old dress someone outgrew. "It still looks new. Manage it. You can't expect new things every year." But the truth was, I never expected new things. I didn't expect anything. I just wanted to feel included, even once. One Christmas, one of the girls whispered loudly to my foster mother, "Why do we give her things? She always looks sad anyway." The mother didn't scold her. She simply shrugged. "It's true," she said. "She doesn't appreciate anything." I wasn't sad because I was ungrateful. I was sad because I was treated like a leftover piece of the family. That night I folded the old dress neatly and placed it under my thin pillow. I didn't cry. I just stared at the ceiling, wondering if God saw everything. There were moments when the injustice felt so normal that even I began to question myself. Like the time a relative came to visit. The house was bright that day. Everyone suddenly behaved perfectly. My foster mother asked one of the girls to bring juice for the guest. Another girl brought biscuits. They were smiling, acting polite, as if we lived like that every day. The guest looked around the room and then asked, "Where is that other girl? The quiet one. What's her name again?" They all hesitated, waiting for my foster mother to answer. "Oh, her," she said casually. "She's not really part of the children. She's helping. Helping. Like a housemaid. Like someone hired to serve." The guest nodded slowly. "Oh. I thought she was one of the kids." No, my foster mother laughed. "She's different." That word again, different. Always different. I was standing behind the door when she said it. My heart sank so deeply I felt it in my stomach. I didn't come out until the guest left. Later that night, I overheard my foster siblings joking. "You are not one of us. You are just staying here. You're like the helper." Even though they were laughing, it was not a joke. It was how they truly saw me. One of the most painful days came unexpectedly, a small moment that still sits inside me like a splinter. It was a hot afternoon. I had just finished sweeping the compound when my foster mother came outside holding a tray of food, jollof rice with fried plantain. The smell made my stomach twist. I hadn't eaten since morning. She called the children one by one. They ran, laughing, grabbing their plates. I waited quietly. When the tray was almost empty, I finally gathered courage. "Mama, can I have some too?" She turned, looked at me, then at the tray. "There's only small left," she said. "It's what is remaining in the pot." I rushed to the kitchen with hope burning in my chest. I lifted the pot lid. It was empty. Someone had scraped the bottom. I walked back to the compound and told her gently, "There's nothing left." She shrugged. "Then drink water. Just water." She didn't even look at me. The children stared at their plates, suddenly silent, but none of them offered to share. Not one. I didn't cry. I just walked to my room, lay on my bed, and let the hunger turn into numbness. But the moment that changed something in me, something I didn't fully understand yet, happened weeks later. It was a small sentence. A simple one. Said carelessly. That evening, my foster mother was talking to a neighbor outside. They didn't know I was sweeping near the window, close enough to hear. The neighbor asked, "How is that girl? The quiet one?" My foster mother laughed lightly and said, "She is here, but she is not one of us. She has no place like the others. It's just the truth. She has no place. No place." The words hit me like a stone thrown straight at my chest. I dropped the broom without meaning to. No place, in the one home I had. No place, after all the years I stayed. No place, even though I called them family. That night, I did not cry. I just sat on the floor of my small room and stared at my hands. For the first time in my life, I asked myself, if I truly have no place here, then where do I belong? I didn't have the answer. Not yet. There is a heaviness that comes from growing up in a house where love is measured, rationed, and handed out only to those considered worthy. It's a heaviness you don't see with your eyes. You feel it in your breathing, in the way your shoulders slump even when you try to stand straight, in the way you learn to move quietly enough not to offend anyone. By the time I reached my later teenage years in that house, the weight felt like a second skin. I wore it every day. And it showed, not because anyone cared enough to notice, but because I had become more of an observer than a participant in my own life. I watched my foster siblings grow into themselves. They laughed with confidence. They walked into rooms with an ease I could never imagine having. They called my foster parents daddy and mommy with a softness and certainty I knew I could never echo. Because deep down, I knew those words were not meant for me. Not in their eyes. Not in their hearts. The distance between us became clearer the older we got. One afternoon, my foster sisters were sitting in the living room, having one of those casual, careless conversations teenagers tend to have. I was cleaning the dining table as usual, not really part of the moment but still within hearing distance. One of them said, "I think I'm the favorite child." Another laughed. "No, I'm definitely the favorite. Daddy always brings things home for me." "I'm the first daughter," someone else boasted. "I'm the most important." They went on like that, comparing who was more loved, more valued, more seen. Then, one of them jokingly said, "But at least all of us are real children of the house." Silence fell for a moment. Another girl snorted. "You're forgetting someone." They all looked at me at the same time, almost simultaneously, as if remembering I existed only when I became a subject of amusement. They didn't say my name. They didn't need to. Their smirks were enough. I continued wiping the table as if I hadn't heard anything, but inside, something tore a little more. It wasn't the first time they made jokes like that. It wasn't even the worst. But it was one of the moments that made me realize I wasn't growing with them. I was just growing beside them, like a plant sprouting in the wrong soil. Birthdays hurt, but family photos hurt even more. Whenever someone brought out a camera, my foster siblings rushed to pose. They straightened their clothes, fixed their hair, smiled boldly. I usually stayed out of the frame. Not because I didn't want to be included, but because I learned early that my presence made the adults uncomfortable. One day, a visiting relative said, "Bring all the children, let me take a picture with them." Everyone scrambled together. I stood up without thinking, brushing my dress. My foster mother quickly said, "No, no, not you. Let the children take first." I froze. The children. As if I was a separate species. My foster siblings ran into the frame, gleeful. One of the younger ones even said under her breath, "Why would you join? It's not your family picture." I sat down slowly. Later, when they reviewed the photos, no one noticed the tears drying on my face. There were moments when the discrimination was so subtle it almost felt invisible, but those were the moments that stayed with me the longest. Like how they never used my name unless they were angry. Like how I could walk into a room and no one would pause their conversation to acknowledge me. Like how my opinions were ignored as if my voice carried no weight. One evening, everyone was discussing plans for the holidays. They talked excitedly about traveling, visiting relatives, attending events. I sat near the corner, silently folding clothes from the laundry basket. I whispered, more to myself than anyone, "Will I travel too?" My foster mother looked at me like I had interrupted a sacred conversation. "Travel where? You'll stay and keep the house in order." The room grew quiet. One of the children snickered and said, "She always wants to follow us everywhere." Someone else added, "She forgets she's not really part of the family." Their words weren't loud, but they were sharp. Sharp in that way small knives can cut unexpectedly deep. I nodded quietly, pretending I didn't feel anything. That night, while they packed their bags and danced around excitedly, I swept the house and prepared my room in silence. They left early the next morning. No one hugged me goodbye. No one said, "Take care." No one told me when they'd be back. The house was empty and quiet, too quiet. But for once, the silence didn't feel suffocating. It felt honest. It matched what I felt inside. The emotional neglect was heavy, but the emotional confusion was heavier. Because no matter how badly they treated me, I still craved approval. I still craved belonging. I still hoped, desperately, that one day something would change. Sometimes, I asked myself, is there something wrong with me? Why don't they see me? What am I missing that the others have? These were questions I never found answers to. One of the hardest days happened on a random, unremarkable evening. Dinner was served, and as usual, I waited for everyone to finish before I approached the pot. When I opened it, there was only a small scoop of rice left, barely enough for a child. I took it without complaining. I didn't want to give anyone a reason to call me ungrateful. I sat in a corner of the living room, eating quietly. The children were joking and laughing loudly. One of them noticed me and whispered something into another's ear. They both laughed. I didn't know what the joke was, but I knew it was about me. My foster father walked into the room, saw me eating, and frowned. "Why are you sitting there? You make the place look untidy." I froze. I wasn't doing anything wrong. I wasn't making noise. I wasn't disturbing anyone. I was just eating. Before I could respond, he continued, "Next time, eat in your room. Don't scatter everywhere." Something inside me shifted that day, a small crack forming in a wall I had worked so hard to build around my emotions. Eat in your room. As if my presence contaminated the living room. As if my existence was the scattered thing in the house. I stood up, carried my plate to my room, and closed the door gently behind me. When I sat on the floor and tried to continue eating, the food tasted different. It tasted like shame. But the deepest pain, the one that etched itself permanently into me, came from how easily they dismissed my emotions. One evening, after a long day of chores and silent treatment, I gathered enough courage to speak. I approached my foster mother slowly and said, "Mommy, I feel like I'm not wanted in this house." Before I even finished the sentence, she hissed loudly and waved her hand. "Don't start. You complain too much." "I'm not complaining," I said softly. "I just want to understand why." She cut me off sharply. "Understand what? If you don't like it here, maybe you need to think about where else you want to go." I felt my heart stop. The children stared at me. Some looked amused. Some looked uninterested. None looked surprised. And that told me everything. They all already knew I wasn't wanted. They just assumed I knew too. I walked away before the tears fell. I didn't want anyone to see I was hurting. In that house, showing pain only made you a target. That night, lying on my thin mattress, her words replayed in my head like an echo I couldn't silence. "If you don't like it here, think about where else you want to go." Where else? Where else did I even have? Her words didn't just bruise me, they planted a seed. A seed of thought I had always been too afraid to entertain. A dangerous thought. A necessary one. A thought that whispered to me, "Maybe I need to leave." But how? Where would I go? What would happen next? I didn't know. All I knew was something inside me was changing, quietly, slowly, but surely. Something was rising in me. Not anger. Not hatred. Something else. Something I couldn't fully understand yet. Morning arrived like a whisper I didn't ask for. The house was unusually quiet, too quiet for a Saturday. Normally, I would be awakened by the sound of the other children running around the hallway, laughing and fighting over cereal, or by Mama's voice telling them to keep their voices down because some people are still sleeping. But that morning, silence wrapped the house like a wet blanket, heavy and uncomfortable. I sat up on my narrow bed and looked around the tiny room that somehow always smelled like dampness. My clothes were folded on the old wooden chair in the corner, folded not because anyone cared to do it for me, but because that was the only way I could maintain order in a world where I had little control. My back ached from the hours of chores the night before. Mama had made me scrub the floors again because she said the tiles were looking dull. They weren't. But arguing would only bring more punishment. I got dressed quietly, tying the back of my worn dress and slipping into the shoes with the thin soles. They weren't meant for comfort, they were meant for a use, as Mama called it, a word she often applied to me too. When I opened my door, I saw the other children sitting in the living room, watching cartoons with bowls of cereal in hand. Their legs dangled freely over the edge of the couch. No one looked at me. No one greeted me. They never did unless Mama was watching. And Mama was there. Standing by the dining table. Arms crossed. Eyes sharp. Waiting for me. My stomach tightened. Something was wrong. Before I could speak, she pointed at the dining table. "Sit," she said. Her voice was flat, with that coldness that meant she wasn't angry. She was deciding something. And that always scared me more than her anger. I walked slowly to the chair she pointed at. She didn't offer me breakfast. She didn't tell any of the other kids to shift and make room for me on the couch. She just kept staring. Then she said it. "Your social worker is coming today." My heart fell. Social worker. The two words meant many things, none of them good. I swallowed hard. Why? She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she leaned back on the table as if she were giving a formal announcement. "I'm tired, okay? I'm tired of your attitude. I'm tired of your face always looking like someone forced you to live here. I'm tired of the tension you bring into this house. Your presence, your whole presence, is becoming too much work." She paused to glance at the other children, who were pretending not to listen. "It's time for them to have peace." Her words hit me like icy water. Them. As though I was not part of this family at all. As though I were noise, not a child. I tried to hold my voice steady. "Mama, what did I do?" Her eyes hardened. "You make everything difficult. You never fit in here. You always want something, attention, explanation, special treatment. Why can't you just be like the others? Why must everything with you be a story?" I sat there, frozen. Special treatment. I slept in a room they use for storage. I ate last. I wore clothes handed down so many times they had outlived 3 children before me. I did chores the others weren't even old enough to spell. But arguing wouldn't matter. It never had. So I stayed silent. "Good," she said, misreading my silence as agreement. "The social worker will decide what's next for you. You're making this home uncomfortable." Home. She called it home. But never once had it been that for me. The sun rose higher through the window, casting light on the children still laughing at the TV. Their joy was not mine to share. Their world did not include me. A heaviness settled on my chest. The kind that makes breathing feel like a chore. I wanted to cry, but I'd learned long ago that tears only fed Mama's irritation. So I kept my face blank, something I had practiced for years. She studied me again. "Go clean the veranda," she said. "While we wait." I stood and walked away, my legs trembling slightly. In the hallway, my eyes burned, but I kept my tears inside. If she saw them, she would accuse me of trying to manipulate her again. The veranda was cool from the morning air. I swept slowly, not trusting myself to move any faster without falling apart. My mind kept repeating her words. "You never fit in here. You bring tension. You make this home uncomfortable." I wondered if she ever saw the things I saw, the times her children threw my books outside, the nights they left me to wash the dishes alone, the mornings they stole my breakfast, the moments they snickered when she scolded me more harshly than she ever scolded them. I wondered if she knew. Or if she simply chose not to care. Hours passed. Then came the knock on the door. A soft, professional knock. The kind social workers use because they walked into people's pain for a living. Mama called me into the living room. The social worker, a woman with warm eyes and a notebook pressed to her chest, smiled at me with concern that felt almost painful to look at. "Hello, sweetheart," she said gently. Mama didn't give me time to respond. "We need to discuss her behavior," she said quickly, as though she'd been rehearsing. The social worker nodded slowly. "Of course. I'm here to talk to both of you." I tried to sit, but Mama stood in front of me like a wall. "She's becoming a problem. She doesn't connect with the family, she's always moody, uncooperative, doesn't listen, and creates a lot of tension among the children." Each accusation stabbed deeper. The social worker turned to look at me. "Is that how you feel, sweetheart? Do you feel disconnected here?" My voice trembled. I don't feel disconnected. I try. I really try. But sometimes, it feels like they don't want me. Mama folded her arms. See what I mean? Always playing the victim. The social worker scribbled something in her notebook. Then she asked the question that changed everything. What about chores? Does she do them regularly? Mama laughed sharply. Chores? She barely does anything unless I push her. My heart stung. I did everything, more than everyone else combined. The social worker looked at me gently. What chores do you do? I swallowed. Everything. The floors. The dishes. Washing clothes. Cleaning the backyard. Most mornings I make breakfast for everyone. Lies, Mama snapped. The social worker paused. Do the other children do chores? No, Mama answered quickly. They are still young. She is the oldest. Should help. The social worker nodded again, writing. Mama kept talking, trying to paint a picture of me that didn't match reality. But as she spoke, I watched something shift in the social worker's eyes. A quiet awareness. A growing suspicion. A recognition. Then the social worker gave me a small nod, one only I noticed. A nod that said, I hear you. I see you. Don't give up. She closed her notebook gently. I will be submitting a report, she said calmly. I've gathered enough for now. Mama looked confused. So what happens next? We'll discuss it, the social worker replied. But we won't rush anything. Mama forced a smile, but something in her face cracked with worry. The social worker turned to me. Can I see your room before I leave? Mama hesitated, but had no choice. Of course. I walked ahead. The social worker followed behind me. Mama trailed reluctantly. When we reached my room, the social worker froze. A small, cramped space. No decorations. No comfort. Just the bare minimum. A storage room pretending to be a child's bedroom. She looked at me, then at Mama. Is this her room? Yes, Mama said stiffly. It's temporary. Temporary for how long? Mama didn't answer. The social worker touched my folded clothes carefully, as though seeing the truth in how I organized my little world. I felt my heart beat in my throat. Then she stepped closer to me, lowering her voice just enough. Thank you for showing me, she whispered. Everything is going to be okay. I promise. And then, she left. Just like that. Mama didn't speak to me for hours. The silence was heavy, trembling with anger. By evening, she finally said the words I knew were coming. You just ruined your chances here. But I wasn't the same child who stayed silent anymore. Something had shifted. Not in the house. Not in Mama. But in me. I was done shrinking. Done begging for space. Done pretending I didn't feel pain. I looked her in the eyes, really looked, and for the first time, I didn't look away. I didn't ruin anything, I said softly. I just told the truth. She opened her mouth, stunned. But before she could speak, a knock sounded on the door. A firm, decisive knock. Mama froze. I froze. The whole house froze. She went to open it. And standing there were two social workers. One holding a folder. The other holding my case file. Both wearing the kind of expression that meant, this house, this story, this treatment, was no longer going to continue. And that was where everything changed.